still do that as consultants, by the way. You're managing new initiatives. You're a help desk. You're a business analyst. You're onboarding new users and doing training. You're managing production support. You're getting requests like, why am I getting this insufficient privileges error? You're doing all this stuff as one person. So this looks familiar? Yeah? Okay. So one of the things I would say here is being a solo admin is a juggling act, and you're juggling all these requests and you're doing all these things. But right now, it's a fairly fluid process because you're really your governance process, you're your change control board. There's really no reason to be transparent because, hey, you're the only one there at the party. So one thing I will say here is if you feel like you are spinning plates like this, and my little pro tip here is start tracking these items. Because if you think at some point you're going to need additional assistance, whether it's one more person helping you or it's 5 more people helping you, tracking these things is going to be what you need to push that boulder up the hill and tell management, hey, I can't do it as one person. I've run out of limbs to spin plates on. So one of the things that I normally do, excuse me, allergies in Atlanta are killing me. One of the things that I generally do is use some sort of tracking tool to track all these requests. You can spin up a custom object, but one of the things that I really like to do is use a cases object in Salesforce. You guys do that for managing end user requests? Yeah, separate record type, track everything, reporting. Isn't that what we spout all day about why Salesforce is great? Use it to your advantage. So as we kind of talk through the whole solo admin piece and how much work there is to do, you might run into this IT versus business debate. So as you're kind of talking to management and you're socializing that change, like, hey, I might need an extra person or 5 more people. Have you guys run into this at your companies? The IT versus business debate? Am I saying anything? Yeah, it's resonating. Okay. So one of the things about Salesforce is that usually when your AE comes in and talks to you, they're all like, yeah, Salesforce is great. It's so easy. My 8-year-old can use it. You guys heard that line? Yep. That's why we have a success community, right? Because 8-year-olds use it. So business buys into this. They're like, yeah, we don't need you IT because IT is expensive and they're really hard to deal with and we don't know what they do. So because this is the way Salesforce is generally pitched, business says, yes, this is what we can do. IT, we don't need you. Well, guess what? You actually, you do need that, right? So you might have triggers in your org. You might have all kinds of development things that you want to do. Yep, Process Builder is great. Flow is great. And these are things that admins can do. But there still might be some development that you need to do. So how do you bring the two of those things together? So one of the things that we notice in this whole IT versus business debate is that knowing where Salesforce sits is going to help you as you decide to expand. So where should Salesforce really sit? So in all of my admin roles, I've sat in the business. I don't know if that's the same as you guys, or you sat in the business. You sit in the business. Okay, I'm saying no's. I'm saying yes. Okay, so we have a kind of mix. Salesforce is different. You could sit on the business. You could sit in IT. But what happened with me is that I got a half an FTE per month to do anything that I had. That's 20 hours over an entire month. Remember that slide where I was spinning plates? That's what ends up happening. So you're working the job of multiple people, and your IT investment is only like 20 hours from somebody. So what ends up happening is that as you're spinning plates and you're doing all this stuff, and business is like, yeah, Salesforce is so great, and look at what a great job Jody's doing, and she's got this all under control, and IT investment, yeah, we pay for licenses, but 20 hours of one person, it's all great, it's all good. The problem is now you want to expand. Salesforce is running so great. You look like a swan. You're gliding on water, you're paddling underneath furiously, but now you want to expand because you've done such a good job. Then what happens? Have you guys run into this? You want to add more users? You might be on Sales Cloud, now you want to add Service Cloud. How many more plates can you spin? Exactly. So what really was what I needed to go through was the part that I had in my last Salesforce org. I had 450 users.
Oh my God.
Is that a good or a bad oh my God?
Salesforce recommends 2 admins per 80 users.
Thanks for pointing that out, because I actually have a piece of the stats on that. So, thanks, Jen. So the reason why I'm pointing this out is because we're adding to Salesforce, right? We're trying to do more things. Salesforce looks so great. Well, there's only so much of that swan thing that I can do where I'm just quickly paddling underwater. So my company decided we were going to add, Jen, don't freak. We were going to add over 1,000 users to Salesforce. We were going to have 15 business units using Sales Cloud with all this great stuff. That's really great. Love it, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. Really great. We're going to have 15 business units, over 1,000 licenses. How awesome is this? You're going to be in charge of the Salesforce org. By myself? But management doesn't see that because we end up being the victims of our own success, right? So as we were spinning plates, they're not seeing that. They're seeing that I walked into a mess of an org, got everything straightened out, because the way it was working with 20 hours a month, when I walked in, everything was going to IT, which then just created a bottleneck. Have you guys experienced that? Walked in with Salesforce org where everything went to IT and you just basically were like, I'm just going to make you a report. That's what I do. That's what I'd walked into. So now everything's sitting in IT as a bottleneck. What happens? You end up getting low user adoption, especially Sales Cloud, because, Service Cloud, you kind of have no choice. But, sorry. So with Sales Cloud, user adoption is key, right? And if you're asking, someone's changing territories and you have to change who owns the opportunities and stuff like this sits in your IT queue for months, no one's going to use Salesforce. They're going to start using an Excel spreadsheet. So I took all of those things, all of those requests, those plates that I was spinning, all that stuff that I was doing, and went back to management and said, that is my tipping point. There's absolutely no way that I am doing all of this stuff, and remember my cases, I could show how much I was doing. There's no way that I'm going to be able to do this with double the user base. So,
and what was their response?
But you're doing such a great job. Can we just give you one more IT contractor? No. So now, taking on 1,000 users. What do you have when you take on new users, new areas, new stuff? You have training, you have more user management, you have more stuff. So this, as we were talking about our proposed expansion, this is what I look like. This is what I look like. And the stuff that we were doing like complicated sales planning, like let me look at my numbers for the year and divide them by 12 and then adjust them for seasonality. I'm like, what? I wasn't a salesperson by trade. I'm like, I'm doing what? I'm designing? I'm administering this? Okay. So all these things, it's a great place to be in, right? So what I'm doing is great. It's resonating. The company's investing more money. They're investing in building out Salesforce. They're investing in new users. But what about here? Don't you want Salesforce to be a success? It's not going to be a success if you're not investing on the back-end maintenance of it. When I started my Salesforce career, I had done a couple of implementations. If you've done implementations, that's easy. Have you done day-to-day support? Is that easy?
No.
Any of you guys feel like birds pecking at your head when there's a lot of requests coming in and you're just like, I've told you how to do that 6 times? You guys feel like that? Birds pecking at your head? Okay, good. Making sure what I'm saying is making sense. So this is where I hit my tipping point because I looked like that and I was screaming. What do you do when you get to this point? You need to expand out. So if you think about all the things I talked about, the amount of stuff that you're doing, what you're maintaining, now how you're tracking it, so you have your cases, all the stuff you're providing, what do you need to do? You need to change how management thinks. Because, again, I sat on the business side. So management is just thinking, well, you're giving it to IT. And I'm coming back and saying, well, IT's not doing anything, so it's just me. So now I need to change, this sounds really corny, but hearts and minds. Business side, we don't think about, how to maintain a Salesforce org. That was always in IT. So I am now sitting in a sales ops area with this coming at me. Should have put a picture of a bullet train here. So I have this brilliant idea that I'm going to build a center of excellence. So let's talk about what a center of excellence is. You guys have all heard of it, right? Okay. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to leverage the people, that was actually just a person, the process analogy, all the things that were in my head, and to actually build that team. Sorry, you guys can hear me, right? I can't actually move from this spot. I wanted to take all these things and build it and use best practices and do the right things, because when you're so overloaded and you're at that point of where you're just making things happen, are you using best practices? Are you just basically getting it done? So you're just basically putting a Band-Aid over that leaking spot in the boat, right? I have to be careful I don't use like Britishy type things from living in London, because then you guys are going to look at me like, huh? So this is what I want to do. This is my vision. But I knew it was going to be an uphill climb. This is that boulder I talked about, because I'm in a sales ops area. They don't get it. I'm working with trainers. I'm working with people who are like, well, you should enable people to sell more. Why aren't they selling more? We gave you Salesforce. What more do you want? I need help. So I wanted to be able to build a team where we could actually have people with some business knowledge, and I could train them on Salesforce or have some Salesforce skills. Because I don't know about you guys, I got tossed Salesforce because I drew the short straw in my first role. Anybody else get that? You figure things out really fast. Take this. That's how I got my start in Salesforce. And so many people say the same thing to me. That's how I got my start in Salesforce. So I know that I can always train somebody and bring somebody up to speed. I knew that I can do this. So I was okay with getting some people some business knowledge and some tech savvy that were willing to sit on the business side, because IT is real glamorous. So what I want to do is bring them together. How do we look at the processes in place? How do we look at what's coming at us with this new big project that we're doing? How do we make sure that we get everybody trained at the same time and doing things right? One of the things that when I inherited my Salesforce org is I had a lot of people who learned via chairside. Have you guys encountered that, where someone new learned from somebody else who learned from somebody else who did it all wrong? Yeah, I had a lot of that in my org. So I wanted to be able to go out and do a road show. I wanted to be able to do some like web-based training, because I wanted everybody to be doing the same thing. I know, I had high aspirations. I wanted to be able to have people that could answer questions. I actually wanted to be able to take a vacation without bringing my phone with me because I needed to reset somebody's password. This was before Salesforce A, by the way. That was a lifesaver. So I wanted to be able to put all this stuff together and then actually be able to manage all the components of Salesforce in terms of change requests. What are the things that we want to do? What are the enhancements we want to do? What do we want to do to make things better in Salesforce? Little incremental tweaks. I wanted to be able to control what got prioritized and sent through to IT. I wanted to be able to be at the forefront of that entire process, because I figured if I could do that and work with a team of people, then I could engage IT better and really use them for the things I needed them to do. Code. I'm not a coder by nature. I tried. It takes an awfully long time. I'm going to stick to what I'm best at. So I wanted to be able to kind of put this together and then interface with IT so we can work collaboratively because we knew Salesforce was different. There's this whole DevOps thing that you guys have probably been hearing a lot about with agile methodology. Great, was not there 5 years ago. So these are the things I want to do. And again, I know you guys were like taking some pictures. I will put these up on my blog. So the question came back from management, well, because I'm working on my boss at the time, why? Why do you want this? So these are the reasons I came up with. Salesforce is unique. It's not like anything else you'd ever seen in the enterprise, right? We had Siebel before Salesforce. Siebel, it sat on the IT side, and everybody just used it because it was there, and it didn't change. We needed a different way of approaching Salesforce. We wanted it to be maintained on the business side and interface with IT. So we wanted to come up with something different. So that's why we created the Center of Excellence, because it was unique. We also wanted to be able to make it quick and easy, but have that discipline and process behind it. So again, when it was just me, just kind of like stop gaps and not using best practices, I wanted to make sure that what we did going forward were the right things. I was teaching people the right ways of doing things. Actually, what we built in Salesforce was correct, and it was aligning with what the best practices were. You guys know Salesforce changes 3 times a year. 3 times a year, you have things that you have to review because you may or may not want to put them in your org just yet. They may or may not have an impact. Or new things that come out that you're like, oh, I think my users would really like this. It's not as easy as just flipping a switch and being done. You need to actually train users. I remember when, I'm going to date myself a little bit, contact roles came out. That was great. That was exciting. We really needed that. Do you know how long it took me to explain what that meant to people? They didn't quite get it. But once they got it and you were able to actually go to where they live and explain what that is and why that was beneficial to them, it was a great change. But all of that stuff, just the 3 times a year that Salesforce has releases, takes time. So we wanted to be able to keep up with that, and then any of the needs. So in addition to using my cases for production support requests, we started encouraging people to put things in there that also may be enhancements, nice to haves. And I was able to take those cases and change how I categorize them. So here are things that need to be done. Here are things for the future. What can we look at for incremental changes that are going to make people's lives easier? So I want to be able to keep up with that change of pace. Data management. Nobody has that challenge, right? Data's perfect in your system, right? It was a disaster in my system. So keeping up with the data management challenges, having all the right things in place, building like validation rules. Now, doing this, I would have time to do that. And then I actually came to a situation where I had a single or multi-org decision. I don't know if you guys have encountered this. I think Salesforce has kind of gone back and forth a few times on what the right thing is to do. But we had a reorg in the middle of my project, where now, not only did I have 1 org, I now had 3. Did it make sense to put them together? Did we leave them apart? I'm in the middle of a project, now's the time, right? What's 2,000 users? So being able to take that step back, and we actually worked with my Salesforce AE and the sales engineer to do some of this analysis. Does it make sense? Do we use the same business processes? Are the outputs the same? How do we interact? Do we use the same customers? Is it the same data? That's a really big thing where you're looking at different orgs. So this allowed, and this is my pitch to management, I can do these things in a more thoughtful manner where I'm not just, scrambling to get things done. Because how many of you guys really have the time to do these things in a thoughtful and strategic manner as a solo admin? You don't. You just don't. And unfortunately, it's just the reality of it. And hats off to you, solo admins, because that's a tough job. I did it for far too long. By the way, I loved it actually. You have a lot more autonomy. So the first step, again, back to management. What does management love? Management loves metrics. Don't talk to me unless you have numbers to back up what you're saying. You're never going to change our minds unless you can prove to me why we need to spend an extra X amount for a new employee. So average salary, I think, of an untrained business analyst for Salesforce, I think is like in the 40 to 60,000 range. Now, I'm originally from the Northeast. It could change, sorry. But when you're talking about full-time FTEs, that's even more money. So how do I justify that I was just thinking one person at this point. To Jen's point, Salesforce did actually come back and give me some metrics, which I'll go over in a little bit. I actually needed 3 people. I thought one person was going to be a tough sell. Do you know what 3 people looks like to management? I might as well have been asking for the entire world at this point. So what I did in my free time is I sat down and started bucketing things out that I was doing. What are the things that are going to be value add to the organization? What are things that are overhead? So managing new initiatives, yeah, that's what I really love. That's what I'm good at, doing program management, doing project management. Yeah, I like that. I want to do that. That's a value add because I'm meeting with end users and they're going to be doing some new sales campaign, something new. Yeah, I want to do that stuff. That's cool. New user admin, not so much. So I went through and I just kind of bucketed these out. Managing new initiatives, training, business analysis, Salesforce Suite. These are the things that I want to do. This is where I feel like I'm going to add the most value. Production support, help desky stuff. I don't know about you. That just did not excite me. So I put this in overhead because in my brain, if I can bring in additional people to support me, and even though Salesforce said 3, I was willing to settle on 1. Went small. But I can bring this person in to backfill me because this is a great way to get people, production support, great way to get people introduced to Salesforce because now you're going to know everything, sort of trial by fire, right? So this is what I thought would be a great way to do this. And I spent time going through and doing this with everything I did. Now remember my cases. I was able to pull a report as to how much time I spent doing the yucky stuff versus the good stuff. And when I say yucky, it was yucky to me. So I was able to kind of put that together. So what started to come out? A business case. I need to justify staff. I need to figure out a way. It's just the same as when you were purchasing Salesforce. I need to justify why I need to spend X amount of money on this tool. So now I need to do the same thing for people. Now, when you're also putting together numbers, because numbers are great, management loves numbers, they're quantitative, they're great, easy. But I also need to tell a story. Why do I need this person? What is it that I want to achieve? Just saying that you want to make your end users happy and you don't want them to be yelling at you and your phone to ring off the hook and your email to explode on a daily basis, that's not the story you're telling. Because think about it. While you're doing this, this is a career booster. You're now showing that you're not just in the day-to-day. This is a bonus. We weren't going to talk about career boosters. You're not just in the day-to-day weeds. You're also thinking about how do you take what you have in front of you and elevate it. Now you're being proactive. You're really looking at what that horizon looks like. I'm saying to people, and I was doing this in the middle of this project. The project lasted 1.5 years. Don't ask. It lasted 1.5 years. So in the middle of this project, I'm doing this because in my proposal, I needed to get these people that were going to help me, if it was 1 or 3. I think I ended up getting 2. I needed to get them on board before we went live because there was no way I was going to be able to do all the testing and the day-to-day maintenance and everything else that came along with actually doing a project and managing the project at the same time. But I wanted to tell this story, and I wanted to show management why I had sat down and was really thoughtful about what it was that I wanted to do, what I wanted to achieve. So this was my call to action. When I put together my business case, I wanted to talk about how we provided the value-added services. We weren't just overhead. Now, IT is usually construed as overhead. Sales ops is overhead too. What's the value that I'm bringing to the organization? So this is how I constructed my business case. I wanted to talk about how we would have governance, because IT sort of thought I looked like a bit of a lone wolf. I was kind of doing my own thing. But that's really the nature of being a solo admin. It's all in your purview. You look like a lone wolf, but it's only by necessity that you end up looking that way. Because do you have people who are like, hey, you're a solo admin, I want to help you out. I want to, make sure you're prioritizing your requests. No, it's usually whoever screams the loudest, right? That's usually how your requests are prioritized. So I wanted to take a step back and say, these are the core tenets of building my COE. I wanted to have governance. I wanted to have business management. Business was putting money in this project. I felt that they had skin in the game, and I wanted them to be a part of it. I wanted them to be a part of what was happening, because it's too often you'll see them just buy something and toss it over the wall to IT, and then you just don't know what happens after that. Kind of goes into that black hole of IT. I'm seeing a lot of nods, so it makes sense to a lot of people. Change management. How do we prioritize these things? How do we look at what's important and what's impactful? The person that screams the loudest might not be the one you really want to listen to. The person that's coming to you saying, you know what, I have this really great idea. We haven't touched these particular clients in a while. I think we should do a campaign. That's important, because that's going to move your needle forward in terms of business value, right? But the person screaming the loudest might just want their opportunities moved to a different person. No, some business value, but not as much as the campaign. So talking about release management, your release cycles, how often you're going to be doing things. Support management. Now, with 450 users, I had a significant amount of production support. What do you think that looked like with 1,000 users? What do you think that looked like with a complex custom-built territory management solution, which was dependent on a data warehouse feed that may or may not have worked on a given day? It was 3 objects that worked together with the account to do a bunch of codes, like producer codes, and put them onto an account. We called it the flux capacitor. And seriously, on a given day, it may or may not have worked. So that was on the IT side. So did my phone ring when the flux capacitor didn't work because of an IT feed? Absolutely. But how did we handle that? What was the best way to handle and triage all these issues and be able to get them to the right people? Territory management. Have you guys worked with any kind of territory management? It is a beast. It is a beast in and of itself. What about when you're redrawing territory lines? I just saw an eye roll, so I know I'm hitting somewhere. Territory management, Salesforce will go, oh, it's fine, if you're using account teams. But that took a lot of time, and I completely underestimated how much time that would take. So these are the things I wanted to put in place, because what you want to do at the end of the day is get ahead of that. You don't want things like, unfortunately, that territory management thing really blindsided me because I didn't realize how complex that was going to be, especially because it was custom. But you want to stay ahead of that. You want to stay ahead of the releases. You want to stay ahead of all the stuff that's coming and have your finger on the pulse of what your organization is going to need to keep moving forward. And I felt like this was how I was going to do it. Have any of you guys done anything like that or thought through change management, support management? It's hard. It's really hard, but doable. So I decided that something got erased off the top of my slide, but that should say governance. So that was my model, with governance sitting in the middle, because I wanted to be able to empower the business. I also wanted to have that change management process to manage the enhancements, the delivery, everything that we needed, the prioritization of resources. I also wanted to be able to manage the releases, have that subject matter expertise, because I was still responsible for training as well. So now, not only am I responsible for end user training, I'm responsible for now training new people that are coming in and helping me. So I'll fix the slide before I put this up. But yeah, that's top one is governance. So making sense so far? And this is what Jen was talking about. So when I was building my business case, Salesforce was, and I have the actual document. It's an old document, but it's really good. It kind of goes through all this stuff. And it doesn't even actually layer in like Service Cloud now. So if you're working with Service Cloud, Live Agent, all that stuff, it doesn't even layer how complex that stuff gets. So in putting together my entire business case, I had my metrics, all the stuff that I was doing. I had what the value add activities were, what the activities were that were overhead, and I could give to more junior resources so I can train them. The other key piece is that I had a backup. Not having a backup, that's pretty scary. How do you go on vacation? Anybody running into that challenge now where you try to take some time off and your phone's still going off? Yeah.
Maternity leave. You have to leave people on maternity leave and come back.
I haven't tried that. I actually, you can talk about that one if you want. But actually, personally, I had a death in my family in the middle of this project. That was really tough because my phone is still going off, and I'm sorry, that's the last thing I want to do. So, excuse me. So I put together my metrics. I did all that stuff, created my structure, told my story. Then guess what? This from Salesforce, this was just the cherry on top. Because now Salesforce is telling me, you cannot do this by yourself anymore. So there's a couple of ways. I wasn't going to step through too much, but I just wanted to give a little bit of a highlight to kind of wrap this up, because I've given you the key pieces, and like I said, I'll put this up on my blog. You need to think about how you're going to do that resourcing and what makes sense for you. At the time, we opted to hire in a couple of business analysts. They were not Salesforce trained, so they came at a smaller price tag. But recognize that that means you're training. Your Trailhead's amazing, did not exist when I was doing this. So realize that you're training. And even with Trailhead's amazing, Trailhead's not your org. So with territory management, if you're doing any kind of Service Cloud stuff, whatever customizations you may have, not to forget starting to layer in Lightning and everything else that's been coming out over the last year, it's not your org. You're still going to have to do knowledge transfer. So recognize that being able to hire in full-time FTEs is an option. You can also do the same thing on the IT side. So if you wanted to work even closer together with IT, I opted not to do the IT side thing for various reasons. There was a bit of a contentious relationship with IT, so I did try to collaborate as much as possible, but it was more of, well, this is an IT person, they should only code, versus, no, I got some other stuff for them to do that's not code. So we opted to not go the IT route. We enlisted Premier Support, so I don't know if you guys are using Premier Support, Salesforce's Premier Support. We use them for like password resets and quick questions. So anything that was like, I can't get this report to run, or I want to build this report really quickly, something like that, we had them go to Premier Support almost like level 1. What we did for our project to try to alleviate some of the time suck of doing everything else is we actually brought in Salesforce as when they had their CFL program, and more consultants than they do now. We actually had Salesforce consultants come in and do the actual configuration and the code for us when we were launching this whole project. But one of the things that was not available to us, and I would highly recommend, is being able to do managed service contracts. So these are people who already usually work for a Salesforce consultancy and can help you with your org. So that wasn't an option. That was sort of like a new thing that just kind of started really spinning up about 3 or 4 years ago. What a lot of times you can do is use the same consultants that you had on your project. So when I was with Cloud Sherpas, we did a lot of this where we did very complex Salesforce orgs. So if we implemented, and we did this, New York Life was actually a really great client of ours. I don't know if I'm supposed to mention clients. Where we did a really complex org for them, and they ended up hiring us on to manage everything afterwards. So one of the ways of being able to actually add to your COE without having to have as much of the investment is being able to do managed services. So if you guys have not stepped into that world, that is really helpful. You could still be at the front of everything, triaging, and then sending over the priorities. They don't work in IT. I felt like there was, I felt like it was easier for us to collaborate with the managed services people, like when we were at some of our clients where we've done this, than it probably was with IT, because you have a lot of constraints when you're dealing with IT. That's how it was in my world. So I do actually have this entire document, and if you guys can't see, 1 to 30 users, 1 full-time administrator. 450 I had. And I don't know what you guys, like what your user base looks like, but if that's 1 to 30 users, you have a full-time administrator, 500 to 750, 1 to 2 business analysts, and 2 to 4 administrators. Yeah. I probably should have done that business case a long time ago. So that was pretty much what I wanted to cover. I mean, I went through the big points of how you really build out the COE, the things you want to be careful of. In terms of pitfalls, I would only say that if you're not managing your requests somewhere where you can actually quantify that, start doing it now. You need to have those numbers to back you up, because you could tell the best story in the world, but without numbers, management's not going to listen. So, any questions? Mm-hmm.
Is there a tipping point for that, the number of projects or the number of support tickets or anything like that, that would be a wow?
So I actually have the entire document, which I'll post online. I don't think it actually goes to the tipping point, but I would say, I think it would be dependent on how much you're really doing. So I think my tipping point was taking on a new project, which was going to be a vast expansion of Salesforce and more than double my current user base. A regular person would have caved much faster.
Any tips for moving from that informal, yelling at the wall, can you reset my password, to, please submit a case or a ticket or whatever to get that password reset? Kind of capturing, getting all this out of email and verbal.
Yeah, so I actually didn't talk about that, but that's a great point. That's change management. So one of the things that we had to do is that as we expanded our user base and we took on more offices, I started doing like communication with users and just saying it's going to be easier and I'm going to be able to prioritize and get them to IT. So you just have to sort of, it starts small, but get them, and I would do things that seems really mean, but if somebody sent me an email, I would send it back and tell them to log a case. You do that too? It sounds really mean. It's just like, but Jody, you're right there. Like, what's wrong with you? No, seriously, I need this through a case. I'm not going to get it done. And that's just part of the whole change management, right? So it's just changing how people think. Because as an administrator, our job is to know that Salesforce is never going to stay exactly the same. It's going to keep evolving and expanding. So you want to make sure you have that in place. Mm-hmm.
When you, I don't know if you did, but like a lot of people, you can post on chatter feeds. So if someone said, hey, can you do this on this particular record on a chatter feed, would you go and log a case after that?
So that's a really good question. We did not use Chatter because we were in a financial services organization. So that was a boulder that I was not willing to push at that point in time. But Chatter is probably a great way. I mean, you could always have a Chatter group where maybe there's requests that come through there. Again, you need to be able to quantify it. And that's why I'm saying the cases are going to be much easier.
And in a chatter group, it's a lot harder to manage.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said you went through, so you didn't know anything about sales at first, but you went into the creative sales process. How did you, take that challenge on? What were your steps to do that?
So I actually, before that project kicked off, I took the opportunity to do some like ride-alongs and visit some people in our sales offices. And that was probably one of the most beneficial things I had ever done, because not understanding what your users do, what their behaviors are, and how they work is a huge disadvantage. Because there was one silly metric that we had, that your opportunity had to be in the pipeline for over 60 days to get credit for it. And I found out my users were taking old close opportunities and reopening them and changing the name. I wouldn't have known. And I caught somebody doing it, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Yeah, we put some validation rules on the opportunity." Anything else? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Would an email to case make sense?
So yes, absolutely. As we started really getting rolling, we ended up doing email to case. That actually worked really well. But again, socializing change, right? So we had to put some changes in place for that. But these guys are supposed to be in Salesforce, so I use it as a way of keeping them in Salesforce. I mean, you have to change behaviors. And one of the things that I see, even still now in the consulting world, get out of email. Get out of email. That is not a CRM. Yeah.
You talked about your org that you work for already having Salesforce and just wanting to expand. Have you had any experience in adoption issues, or because it drives people to actually use it more or anything like that?
My adoption when I took over that org was probably about 10%. It was a disaster. So when we decided to relaunch, we did a little bit of a rebrand, and we got change champions, so basically Salesforce champions that helped us to spread the word. We did a lot of change management work. It was as silly as we had Salesforce chocolate bars, we had pieces in the newsletter to talk about what was coming. I felt like I had permanent pom-poms in my hand. Once we went live, we did a Salesforce treasure hunt where they got like a list of things they had to be able to find in Salesforce, and whomever submitted that was put into a drawing for a prize. We did a lot around change management because 10%, basically they were using Excel. So we did a lot. Mm-hmm.
How did you quantify that with the adoption? Did you base it on how many times they logged into the system, or?
Have you seen the adoption dashboards? They're free. So we did use those, and that was sort of kind of proving our point. But you have to go a little bit deeper than the dashboards because they do look at the logins. We did use the login wall of shame. Not gonna lie, we did use that. So we did use the login wall of shame. And we actually started telling managers, if your people hadn't logged in a certain amount of time, we were pulling their license, and good luck doing your job. It's too expensive to have a license that people are not using. I told you I was mean. Yeah?
When you were talking about the Center of Excellence, the team of people, the processes, the knowledge, and the technology. So we moved in that direction, and we had a lot of barriers. So wanted to have some specific best practices. One of our barriers was that the representative approach, information wasn't getting fed back. It was really, they would come to the center, and it was a weekly meeting, and we had, we realized one of the downfalls was that we were getting too much information verbally. So on our end, we were creating resources like PDFs, 1-minute videos, which is a lot of lift on our end, and we still were not getting the diffusion from that time we had together, which was a big investment.
Yep.
The diffusion wasn't getting back.
So I had a little bit of that, and I kind of reduced the amount of meetings because I felt like it might have been just information overload, and did a few visits. I would look at, so your situation's a little bit different than mine, but I would look at where you're having low adoption or the information's not being disseminated and see if you can kind of zero in if it's a specific department or maybe office and try to see what the underlying, what the root cause is of that. I would look at those things because maybe that's something where the person goes to the meeting. So if you have like a change champion or a Salesforce champion, they're coming to the meeting, but then the minute they get out of the meeting, they're being inundated with work. So it's not that they don't have the best intentions. You always want to think positively, but they could just be, and maybe they're not the right person. So you need to look at that. You need to look at the root causes. Look and see who it is or what the office. And then, I did a train the trainer session last year in New York City with a client, and I had people like answering, jumping up, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm so excited, so excited." Well, there were two people in front that were like, their nose was in their phone. And guess what? Their user adoption, their office sucked. Well, I don't know if I can say that. Guess what? They weren't paying attention. If you're not, and when I deliver end user training, I will look specifically at you. I'm not picking on you. I'll look specifically at somebody and ask them a question because I want to make sure you could feed back to me what I just told you because you're training the end users.
We're all remote. All remote.
Yeah, so the thing is that just maybe they're not the right person or they're too busy. Maybe it's just not something they're interested in.
So were you thinking more like once a month? Was that better?
Yeah, I would look at once a month, but also see if there's better ways. I mean, it sounds like you guys are trying to sort of, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but do, kind of like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Have you surveyed them to see what the best way is to get information? Maybe it's a newsletter, maybe it's an email, maybe it's just a call once a month. Mm-hmm.
What do you do if, so I'm imagining, dreaming about taking away licenses from people who haven't let me know. And I know exactly the phone call their boss makes to my boss, and then I hear about it.
You need to get permission for that mantra. But when you start talking numbers and then they're like,
But so I mean, just taking that a step broader, what do you do where, one part of the organization is all about Salesforce and another part of the organization is sort of like, well, this is kind of being pushed on us, and that goes all the way up to senior management.
that's really hard. And I've experienced that. I spent probably more time with those people in terms of how do they use Salesforce? Is Salesforce, so look at their business processes. Is Salesforce really underpinning their business processes and enabling them? Is it designed in the right way to help them do their job? Because if it's actually a deterrent and it takes them longer, and I know this is sales and everything, sales is big brother, but if it's taking them longer and it's more difficult to do their job, then your uptake's gonna be low.
They're doing it on paper right now, so.
Awesome, it's portable. Do they have Salesforce One? But that's just it, is you're probably gonna have to spend more time with them changing the mentality. Why is it easier for you to do this on paper? What is the benefit of paper? I don't wanna carry a notebook all the time, but guess what? I have my phone. So why? And I think that's just it. It's the root cause. Like, why is that easier for you? And it could just be management. They don't see the value.
I have a suggestion. If you can back that up with automated reports that get pushed out to the respective management levels, then they start having a conversation about, gosh, if I had this all done, one and done in Salesforce, and that information is delivered to management's inbox on Monday morning for their Monday morning calls,
With
that's
dashboards and like, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Then they're gonna see the value in that because it's already done for them. And it kind of takes away, if you frame it right, takes away that big brother mentality. I'm doing this for you and it makes your job easier. You don't have to spin up a spreadsheet or figure out who do I do this.
I'm careful on that one just because of the whole big brother mentality. So they're like, oh, but I can report on this for you. So you have to spin it that it's a value for them and not that it's a report going to management.
Right. This will support your Monday morning meetings.
Exactly. Yep. Spin the value prop. Yes?
So show your salespeople how it makes money for them, And all you have to do is show them how to get their points, and they'll jump at it.
We're actually not.
Job security is
Yeah.
point operating.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
So I have 1,000 users that I manage. And just to answer your question about getting rid of licenses, just as a help, what I did and still do, and they only have to log in once a month. I do a monthly audit. Once a month, if they don't log in, I send their leader a message, here's the people that haven't logged in, here's how much it's costing you. They have to submit, I use case management because I can't support that many users without it. And they have to submit a deactivation exception request to keep that license. That works because
Right action on their part.
more
yeah.
work for them. They're like, just freaking log in once a month, and then I won't have to go through this. So that does work. I won't just shut their licenses off because then I end up reactivating them because they scream.
Yeah,
But with
yeah, and
deactivation, they are aware.
yeah.
And then when they come to me and go, how come it got deactivated? I go, because your leader did just.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could do a report. You don't have to be as mean as me and just shut it off, but. But that was it. I was dealing with 10% adoption. Anything that was going to get in somebody's face and say you're losing this was, I kind of was going for shock and awe. Yes?
But it's fun in that sense. You actually get to see how long before they call you. And I'm like, and all you have to do is say, oh, well, let me see, maybe something changed with your password, and I just turn them back on. And I'm like, 6 months, I have a nice license there for somebody else. So I do it all the time. Every month I go out and I look, whoever hasn't logged in, bam, they're all just gone.
I feel like I'm in good company. Okay, so I think I totally took over way more time than I was supposed to, and I apologize for whomever is coming in this room, but thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I have some cool stuff from Salesforce, like that document. I have like some like value prop type of stuff, and I'll put up my slides. I'm also going to summarize what I did at the end because I didn't put that on a slide. I just talked through it. I'll do that as well. So hopefully that helps.
What's your contact?
Yeah, where do we get that?
Oh, yeah, my blog. It's hang on. Let me go back to my page. It's forceofanarchy.com. And I think most of you guys know me on Twitter. I tweet random stuff. Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I thought I was only speaking for like 30 minutes, so I totally